What is up, everybody? Thanks for clicking on the video. This is another episode of Break the Silence. I'm your host, Cyborg. I'm your recently turned 23 host, Cyborg. My birthday was yesterday. I got this new chain to add to the collection. This little basketball hoop here. Pretty fire. That's a heater. We just got done watching Game 2 of the NBA Finals between the Boston Celtics and the Golden State Warriors, a game in which the Golden State Warriors won 107-88, and they tied up the series at one apiece, headed back to Boston. As a Celtics fan, this one was tough to watch and kind of ruined my birthday, to be 100% honest with you. But there's always next year's birthday. My Kobe Bryant birthday. But we're going to move on to the game here and break down a couple things and a couple thoughts I had from tonight. As many of you know, there's only one thing I like more than seeing my team win, and that's being right. And if you go back and you watch my preview of this series, which was 2 videos ago, and while I have you here, if you wouldn't mind liking and subscribing, we're trying to build this up. I've been doing breakdowns after every game of the playoffs since I started this, and we're going to continue to do so, and we're going to go into the offseason. We're going to have a lot of good discussions, and I like seeing your comments. I like being able to interact with you guys. So if you wouldn't mind liking and subscribing, that helps out a ton, and will continue to help us grow here. But as far as me being right, in that preview video, I predicted that 2 of the first 4 games would be blowouts. And we just got our first one tonight in Game 2. Now, the reason being is that the Celtics play so poorly so often. And I'm going to give the Warriors a lot of credit here in a second, but I want to start with the Boston Celtics part of this, because it's something that we've seen over and over, that when they turn the ball over at a high clip, they lose a lot of basketball games. And that's why a lot of these series that they've been in have gone 7 games to the Bucks without Chris Middleton, 7 games to the Heat, who maybe weren't great outside of Jimmy Butler. When the Celtics turn it over, they don't have the opportunity to set up their half-court defense, which is what truly makes the Boston Celtics so special, is their half-court defense. Their transition defense is amongst the worst in the NBA, but their half-court defense is by far the best. So when you turn the ball over at a high clip, you let them get out in transition. And not only do they get open layups sometimes if it's a bad turnover, but also you get a lot of mismatches. So, you end up with Robert Williams guarding Steph Curry, and it's a lost cause. But the Celtics decided to have one of those games tonight where they shot 37.5% and had 15 turnovers, and they got blown off the floor, and all their starters were out of the game with 11 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And I think Ime Udoka pulled them because he was just disgusted by the way they were playing basketball, and I couldn't agree with that decision more. The Golden State Warriors, on the other hand, are a team that in Game 1, we saw a little bit of struggles on offense when Steph wasn't doing everything. And tonight, we saw a little more contributions from a couple other pieces. Jordan Poole, I talked about last video. And the reason I talked about Jordan Poole is because he's such a liability on defense that if his offense isn't going, he's such a net negative to have on the court. There are guys like that in the NBA who aren't great defenders. There's plenty of guys who aren't elite defenders, but they're so good on offense that they get to see the court. Well, if a guy like that is not going on offense and they're playing bad defense, then they just are a real killer to have out there. Jordan Poole stepped up tonight and had 17 points. Steph did his thing. He had 29, but they got contributions kind of from everywhere. And again, they didn't score a ton of points. 107 isn't a ton here. But again, we saw in the third quarter the Warriors doing what the Warriors do, and that's being the best third quarter team in basketball, and it's stepping on your throat. And tonight, the difference between games 1 and 2 is tonight the Warriors choked the Celtics out. They didn't give the Celtics an opportunity to even have a chance in the fourth quarter. They were up 20, I think it was 24. Don't remember that number off the top of my head exactly. But they were up 20-something points going into the fourth quarter, and that's not a lead that you're coming back from in one quarter. Another thing I said in last video that I heard a lot of people arguing, and it's something that I hear all the time in media, on social media, all these kinds of things. You hear it from big analysts. You hear it from all these people that after the Celtics beat Brooklyn in Game 1, you hear the media say, oh, Kevin Durant is not going to play that bad again, and the Celtics only won on a game winner. So that only stands to reason that the Nets are going to win the next game. Basketball math doesn't work like that. The Celtics' last game won in spite of Jayson Tatum having one of his worst shooting games of his career. In fact, it was the worst shooting game of his playoff career. And so you hear Celtics fans and you hear media saying, well, if the Celtics can win when Jayson Tatum's at his worst, if he just plays average, then the Celtics should win going away. And that is not how it works. We got to stop with that narrative that basketball math works that way. It is not. There are so many factors in a basketball game that contribute to the outcome. And a lot of Celtics fans are going to want to hear me get on here and complain about the refs. And while I don't think the refs did a great job, I think there were a couple questionable calls. Here on Break the Silence, I'm not here to talk about refereeing. I'm just not here to do so and say that's the reason any team lost or won. With the exception of the NFC playoff game a couple years ago between the Saints and the Rams, when the worst missed pass interference call ever, maybe you could blame the ref a little there. But aside from that, I think too much as fans we tend to try to complain about refereeing and saying that's the reason the Celtics lost. The refs didn't cause the Celtics to shoot 37%. They weren't the reason we had 15 turnovers. So, yeah, the refs might have made some questionable calls, but let's move past that. The Celtics laid one of their stinkers, and you're down by 20-something points. Has nothing to do with the referees. The thing that I think the Warriors did great tonight, and might be one of the big reasons they are as good as they are, is so many people hate on Draymond Green, and I personally don't like him. Like, I don't like rooting against him because he chirps so much. But the brilliance of Draymond Green is that he gets in everybody else's head. He gets in the refs' heads. He gets in the Celtics players' heads. And even Ime Udoka got a technical tonight. But you start to see the Celtics when they feel like the refs aren't on their side. They start playing outside of themselves and start playing angry basketball. If anyone's ever hooped growing up, which I'm sure a lot of you did, you know that basketball, you're not better at basketball if you get angry. It's just not how it works. When I would play with my brother growing up, I'm a big talker. I'm a big trash talker. I would trash talk him to the point of tears. But the reason being is that it would make him so mad that he starts getting out of control and it starts making you try too hard. And that doesn't work in sports. It doesn't work in golf, pool, ping pong, basketball, quarterback in football. When you start playing angry, you start making mistakes and you start trying to. It doesn't work in fighting for sure. That's probably the biggest case where you hear these guys that are always talking before fights and it sounds like they hate each other. If you go in there and you're fighting and you let your anger get the best of you, you're going to lose that fight in the UFC and boxing, anything like that. So it's so important that when you don't feel like the refs are on your side or you don't feel like things are going your way, to keep your cool and stay level-headed. And that's what the Celtics didn't do tonight. And that's a credit to the Warriors. And that's credit to Draymond Green. As much as I don't want to give him credit, he deserves credit for that. Tonight, it looked like the Warriors were the more physical team. We've seen this in the Celtics playoff run. In Game 1 against the Milwaukee Bucks, when Milwaukee won, I left that game thinking the Milwaukee Bucks are just the more physical team. The Celtics are really going to struggle in this series. Then we turned around and the Celtics ended up matching that level of physicality. So I think that in Game 3, we'll see the Celtics come back with a higher level of physicality and kind of go from there. My guess would be that the Celtics turn it around in Game 3 to, take that 2-1 series lead. But another interesting piece that I thought was something to look at tonight, and I just got a little bit distracted by what's going on around me, but was Klay Thompson was 4 of 19. And again, don't try with the basketball math. Don't say, well, if next game he's 8 of 19, then they'll easily win. That's not the case. Klay Thompson is such an important part of the Warriors' offense. And the Warriors' offense at times looks like it's so Steph heavy. But Steph is so elite that sometimes that's enough. Because there was one particular play, and I wish I was allowed to show videos on of the game on this, where 4 Celtics went to Steph in the paint and he dumped it off for an easy layup. And I talked about it in my preview video too, the amount of attention he draws makes you play weird defense. And in that video, again, you heard me say that you're going to see the Warriors get some open, inexplicable layups that you wouldn't normally see the Celtics give up. But the reason being is that the way that they guard Steph will be so different than the way that they guard other people because of their fear of Steph. So, and Steph is such a good, he's a good point guard too, as far as facilitating the offense. Like, he's a good passer. He's a willing passer. If he sees the play, he makes the right play a majority of the time. So we're going into Game 3 between the Celtics and the Warriors. The Celtics got what they wanted ultimately. You won a split on the road in the first 2 games. We got ourselves a series. We got 5 games left. 3 in Boston, 2 in Golden State. And you'll hear a lot of the media say tomorrow that this is why they picked the Warriors to win and declare kind of that the Warriors figured something out. And that's not how the playoffs work. The playoffs are all about adjustments. Going into next game, you'll see the Celtics make major adjustments. You'll see the Warriors make major adjustments. And it's a completely new basketball game. The Celtics could go in there and they could win by 30. They could lose a close one. They could lose by 30. That's just the way that it works in the NBA. But let's go ahead and get out of here. I got to get to bed. We got Game 3 coming up on Wednesday. Thanks for tuning into the video. This is another episode of Break the Silence. Cyborg out.